I still remember the exact second my heart stopped. The click of the car door behind me, the sun cutting through the trees, the smell of spring rain in the air, everything froze the moment I looked through those chapel doors and saw my son standing at the altar. He was smiling. That nervous, excited smile he used to have when he opened birthday presents as a kid. Only now, there was a woman next to him in a white gown, clutching his arm like they'd known each other forever. At first, I thought I had the wrong place. I even stepped back, checked the address again on my phone. But no, the little white church on Maple Drive, the one he told me they used for community events, this was it. The sign out front said, "Congratulations, Ethan and Lily." My son's name. A woman's name I had never heard before. My purse nearly slipped out of my hand. I must have looked ridiculous, frozen in the doorway with my mouth open. Someone behind me whispered for me to move so they could take a seat. I stumbled into the back pew, still clutching the small box I'd brought with me. A watch, the same one his father wore when he graduated from college. I'd been planning to surprise him for his birthday, not crash his wedding. You ever have one of those moments where your brain just refuses to process what your eyes are seeing? That was me. The minister's voice echoed through the church. "Do you, Ethan James Carter, take Lily Ann Brooks to be your lawfully wedded wife?" My son said, "I do." Clear as day. The guests cheered, the bride beamed, and I sat there feeling like I'd been dropped into someone else's life. I didn't even cry. Not at first. I just felt hollow. I hadn't seen Ethan in almost 6 months, which wasn't unusual since he'd moved a couple of hours away for work. But he used to call me at least once a week, text me updates, tell me about his projects. Lately, the calls had dwindled down to nothing. When I asked, he'd say he was busy. I never pushed, figuring he was just settling into adulthood, learning independence. Turns out he'd been busy building a whole new life I wasn't even part of. The ceremony ended before I could decide whether to stay or run. People started filing out, laughter filling the room. My instinct told me to leave quietly. But then Ethan turned around. Our eyes met. For a split second, the same boy who used to run to me after scraped knees looked shocked, guilty even. Then he smiled like everything was fine and said, "Mom, what are you doing here?" I don't think I'll ever forget the way those words sounded. Like I was the one intruding on his life. "I came to surprise you," I managed to say, my voice trembling. "Happy birthday!" He froze, realizing what I meant. Then his new wife stepped forward, confusion written all over her face. She was young, maybe mid-20s, long dark hair and a nervous smile. "This is your mom?" she asked softly. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. "Yeah, Mom, this is Lily. Lily, this is my mom, Rebecca." I shook her hand automatically. She seemed sweet enough, but all I could think was, who are you? How long have you been in my son's life, and why didn't he tell me? The guests started heading toward the reception hall, leaving us in the echo of organ music. I wanted to scream, to ask him how he could do this without me, but my throat locked up. Instead, I smiled politely, muttered something about not wanting to interrupt, and walked out before he could stop me. Outside, the afternoon air hit me like ice. I sat in my car, staring at the watch box on the passenger seat. My hands shook so badly, I almost dropped it. How could he get married without even telling me? The drive home blurred past in a haze. I replayed every conversation from the past year, trying to figure out where I went wrong. Had I pushed him too hard about his career? Had we argued one time too many about his girlfriend, whoever she'd been before Lily? Every memory twisted into guilt. When I got home, the house felt emptier than ever. His photos lined the mantel. Ethan at 5 with chocolate on his face, Ethan at 16, holding his first car keys. Ethan at college, graduation, hugging me so tight I thought he'd never let go. I sat on the couch and finally cried. Ugly, heart-wrenching sobs that left me gasping for breath. You know that feeling when you realize you're no longer part of your own child's world? That's what broke me. For days, I tried to reach him. I texted, called, even left voicemails. Nothing. Not a single word. Then, one night, he finally answered. "Mom, look, I'm sorry you found out that way. It wasn't supposed to be like that." Like what? Me finding out you got married by accident? He went silent. Then, we wanted to keep it small. Lily's parents paid for everything, and they wanted it simple. I didn't want to make a big deal. Not a big deal? My voice cracked. Ethan, you got married. You didn't even tell your own mother. I knew you'd be upset, he muttered. Upset? I repeated, trying not to shout. Why would I be upset about my son getting married unless there's something to be upset about? He mumbled something about work and hung up before I could ask more. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced with questions. Who was Lily? Why hadn't he introduced her? What kind of family encourages a man to cut off his mother? A week later, curiosity got the better of me. I decided to drive back to his town just to see him, maybe bring a housewarming gift. I baked his favorite lemon bars, packed them in a tin, and drove 2 hours to his address. When I got there, a woman opened the door. Lily. She looked startled, then quickly forced a smile. "Oh, hi, Mrs. Carter." "It's Rebecca," I said gently. "Is Ethan home?" She hesitated, glancing behind her. "He's at work. Did he know you were coming?" I said I wanted to surprise him. Just brought some dessert. Her eyes darted around, and I noticed something off. Her hand trembled slightly as she took the tin. "That's really sweet of you. He'll be happy to see these." "Mind if I wait inside?" I asked. "Oh, sure, of course." She stepped aside. Their house was cozy, but impersonal, like it had been decorated by someone else. Family photos of Lily with her parents lined the walls, but there wasn't a single picture of Ethan and me. My heart sank. We sat awkwardly at the kitchen table. I tried making small talk, asked where she grew up, how they met. She told me they'd met at his office, but the details didn't add up. Ethan had told me his company didn't allow employees to date coworkers. When I mentioned that, she quickly changed the subject. Something wasn't right. Finally, I said softly, "Lily, can I ask you something? Why didn't Ethan tell me about you before the wedding?" She fiddled with her ring. "I think he was just afraid you wouldn't approve." "Approve of what?" She looked down. "He said you were very protective of him, that you didn't like any of his girlfriends." That stung. I'd only met 2 of his past girlfriends, and I'd been nothing but polite. Sure, I'd voiced concerns about one who seemed manipulative, but what mother wouldn't? "I just want him to be happy," I said quietly. "I know," she said quickly, almost rehearsed. "And he is, really." But her eyes told a different story. Something between fear and guilt. Before I could press further, Ethan's car pulled into the driveway. I saw him through the window, expression tight as he spotted my car. He walked in, voice tense. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I forced a smile. "Just came to drop off some lemon bars." He jaw clenched. "You should have called first." "Would you have answered?" He didn't reply. Instead, he took the tin from Lily and muttered, "Thanks, we'll call you later, okay? Ethan?" "Mom, please," he said sharply. "Not now." The words hit harder than any slap. I stood there, speechless. Lily gave me a sympathetic look, but Ethan's coldness left no room for comfort. I turned and left without another word. Driving home, I couldn't shake the image of Lily's anxious eyes, the tension in my son's voice. Something was wrong in that house. And if you're wondering whether I considered just letting it go, trusting he was fine, believe me, I tried. But a mother knows. Deep down, I knew this wasn't about independence or privacy. Someone or something had turned my son against me. That night, I couldn't get the look on Ethan's face out of my mind. The cold distance, the way he stood beside Lily as if she were a shield between us. It wasn't my son. I'd raised a kind, open-hearted boy. He used to call me his best friend. Something had changed him, and I couldn't just sit in that quiet house and let whatever it was keep pulling him away. The next morning, I did what any mom does when she's desperate for answers. I started digging. I looked him up on social media. Nothing new. His profiles had gone quiet months ago. I checked his company's site, the same engineering firm he joined right after college. There was still a headshot of him on the Our Team page, smiling bright. But when I clicked through to the news section, there was a short post about a promotion. Ethan Carter promoted to senior project lead. The date was about 8 months back, right around the time he'd started distancing himself from me. I tried not to read too much into it, but something told me the two things were connected. Promotions mean longer hours, more stress. Maybe he'd met Lily then at work. Maybe she was part of his team. That would explain how they got close. Still, why all the secrecy? I called my friend Dana that afternoon. She's known Ethan since he was a baby, and she's never sugarcoated a thing in her life. When I told her about the wedding, she gasped so loudly I had to hold the phone away. "He got married without telling you? No way! That boy adored you!" I thought so too. "Did you meet the girl?" "Yes, she seemed nice. Nervous." Nervous how? Like she was hiding something. Dana's quiet for a second. "Becky, promise me you're not going to go all Nancy Drew on this." "I'm just worried." "I get it, but sometimes they pull away, you know? They make their own families." "I could handle that," I said, if he'd done it honestly. I hung up, still restless. The truth is, Dana was right. Part of me was going full Nancy Drew. I drove back out there 2 days later, this time parking a block away from Ethan's house. I told myself I wasn't spying, just making sure he was okay. The blinds were drawn, but I could see the flicker of a television through the slats. A woman's shadow passed the window, probably Lily. I waited until the lights went out before I left. On the way home, guilt hit me. What kind of mother sits outside her son's house at night like a stalker? But that unease wouldn't leave. The next week, a letter came in the mail. It was addressed to me, handwritten, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, Ethan's handwriting. "Mom, please stop showing up. Lily's been through a lot, and I don't want to upset her. We need space. I'll call you when I can. Love, Ethan." No explanation, no warmth, just a wall of distance, sealed with a signature. If you've ever had someone you love more than life itself shut you out with a few sentences, you know that kind of pain. It doesn't just hurt, it burns. I sat with that letter for days, trying to respect his words. But fate, as it tends to do, had other plans. A week later, I got a call from my cousin Mark, who works at a local bank branch near Ethan's town. "Hey, Beck," he said carefully, "don't freak out, but I saw your son today. He came in with a woman, maybe his wife. They were closing an account." "That's normal, isn't it?" I asked. "Yeah, but here's the weird part. The account wasn't in his name. It was in some older guy's. Looked like they were transferring a big sum, and Ethan seemed off, like he didn't want to be there." That set off alarm bells. My Ethan was no thief, but why would he be involved in someone else's money business? The next weekend, I decided to do something I never thought I'd do. I reached out to Lily directly. I found her profile online, sent a short message. "Hi Lily, it's Rebecca. I'd love to get to know you better. Maybe coffee sometime." To my surprise, she replied almost immediately. "Sure. Tomorrow? There's a cafe on Main Street, 11 a.m. I showed up early, hands shaking. When she walked in, she looked different, tired, paler than I remembered. She sat across from me, smiled weakly. "She didn't think you'd actually come," she said. "I meant it when I said I wanted to know you," I replied. "Ethan means the world to me." She nodded, staring down at her coffee. "He loves you, you know. He just doesn't know how to show it right now." "What's going on with him, Lily? I can tell something's wrong." She hesitated, chewing her lip. "It's not my place to say. Please, I'm his mother." For a long moment she said nothing. Then she whispered, "There's someone at his job, a man named Derek. He's been—" She stopped, glancing around. "Using Ethan. Blackmailing him." The room seemed to tilt. Blackmailing? For what? She looked terrified. "I don't know all the details, but Derek helped Ethan get that promotion, and now he's forcing him to do things, financial things, that could ruin his career if anyone finds out." I leaned in, heart pounding. "And you?" "He told Ethan he'd ruin both of us if we said anything. He's already made Ethan cut ties with people he could trust, including you." I sat back, numb. That explained the secrecy, the strange money transfers, the fear in Lily's eyes. My son wasn't shutting me out. He was being controlled. Lily reached across the table, voice trembling. "Please don't confront him yet. He's scared. But maybe if you could find out more about Derek?" "I will," I said, without hesitation. She gave me a small, desperate smile. "Thank you." As she left, I felt the first spark of something new under all that heartbreak. Purpose. What would you have done in my place? Would you have walked away, trusted your grown child to handle it? Or would you have done what I did? Decided to protect him, even if it meant playing a dangerous game myself? Because from that moment on, I wasn't just Ethan's mother anymore. I was a woman with a mission. I drove home from that cafe with my pulse pounding. The world outside looked the same. Families in their yards, kids on bikes, the hum of a Saturday afternoon. But inside, everything had shifted. My son wasn't cold or cruel, he was trapped. And the person holding the leash was a man named Derek. I started where any mom would, online. A quick search of Ethan's company directory pulled up a Derek Lang senior operations manager. I clicked his photo, mid-40s, sharp suit, expensive smile, the kind that looks friendly until you notice the eyes. The man screamed corporate predator. A few more clicks and I found his LinkedIn. He'd bounced between firms every couple of years, always in positions that gave him control over budgets and promotions. That alone didn't prove anything, but my gut screamed there was something off about him. I didn't want to scare Lily or risk Ethan finding out I was digging, so I kept things quiet. I asked my cousin, Mark, the one at the bank, if he could discreetly check whether Derek Lang had any accounts connected to those transfers Ethan made. Mark called back 2 days later. "You didn't hear it from me, but your hunch might be right. There are overlapping transactions between a corporate account Ethan manages and one tied to a Derek Lang. Nothing illegal on paper, but weird enough that an auditor would raise an eyebrow." So Derek was siphoning money, using Ethan's position to hide it, and my son was likely being blackmailed into silence.
That night I sat at my kitchen table staring at my phone, tempted to call Ethan and tell him I knew, but Lily's voice echoed in my head. He's scared. Don't confront him yet. Instead, I started collecting proof. Every document I could find publicly, every LinkedIn comment, every photo from company events that showed Ethan and Derek together. I printed them out and spread them across the table like pieces of a puzzle. And somewhere between the bank records and the staff retreat photos, a plan started forming. I knew I couldn't expose Derek directly without dragging Ethan down too. If this came out wrong, my son could lose everything. His job, his freedom, his future. So I'd have to be careful. Surgical. The first step was information. I needed someone on the inside. I remembered Ethan mentioning an older coworker once, a mentor named Janet. She'd sent him a Christmas card a couple of years ago, her return address still on the envelope I'd kept in a drawer. I wrote her a letter, old-fashioned, non-traceable, and kept it simple. Hi, Janet. I'm Ethan's mom. I believe he may be in a difficult situation at work involving Derek Lang. I'm not asking for details, only if you can confirm he's safe. Please call me from a private number if possible. A week passed. Nothing. Then one afternoon, my phone rang from an unknown number. Rebecca Carter? A cautious voice asked. Yes. This is Janet from Apex Engineering. I got your letter. Thank you for calling. There was a pause. You were right to worry. Derek's bad news. Your son's not the first he's done this to. But you didn't hear that from me.
What has he done? I whispered. Let's just say Derek's very good at finding people's weak spots. He helps them bend the rules to meet targets, then keeps evidence to ensure their loyalty. Ethan's been covering for him. Probably terrified. My throat went dry. Can it be stopped? Only if someone higher up sees proof. But Derek's protected. The board loves him. Still, if you had something undeniable, something public. When we hung up, my hands were trembling. Something undeniable. That was the key. Over the next week, I pieced together every document, screenshot, and financial trace Mark could quietly provide. I didn't know yet how I'd use it, but I knew I'd need allies. Then came the moment I least expected. Lily showed up at my door. Her eyes were red, her hands clenched around her purse strap. She found out I talked to you, she said in a rush. He's furious. Derek told him I was trying to ruin them both. He thinks I betrayed him. Sit down, I said, pulling her inside. She dropped onto the couch, shaking. He's changed, Rebecca. Derek's got him working late every night, saying they're fixing budgets, but I think it's all about hiding transfers. I heard them arguing on the phone last night. Derek said something about a deadline and keeping his mother quiet. I think he meant you. That sealed it. Derek wasn't just manipulating Ethan. He knew I was snooping and wanted me out of the picture. I took a deep breath. Then we're going to make sure he can't hurt either of you again. Lily looked up startled. What do you mean? I mean, I said quietly, we're going to collect everything he's done and let him bury himself with it. But not through the company, through the people who can't be bribed. Reporters, auditors, maybe even law enforcement. We'll make it look like Derek turned on himself. For the first time since meeting her, Lily almost smiled. That sounds dangerous. It will be, I said. But I'm a mom. Danger stopped scaring me the day Ethan was born. That night, as I watched Lily drive away, I realized this wasn't just about saving my son anymore. It was about taking back control of a life Derek thought he could twist. And that was the moment the real revenge began taking shape. The next morning, I woke before dawn. The house was still, the kind of quiet that buzzes in your ears, but my mind was wide awake. For weeks, I'd lived in reaction,
chasing rumors, trying to understand what Derek had done to my son. That morning, for the first time, I felt ahead of him. I spread everything across the kitchen table: bank printouts, screenshots, the list of company vendors Mark had helped me pull. Somewhere in that mess was the thread that would unravel Derek Lang. Lily called around 7. I barely slept. Ethan came home at 2. He looked hollow. Then it's time, I told her. We start today. We met at a coffee shop 3 towns over. No one from Ethan's world would recognize us there. She wore a baseball cap, I kept my hair tucked under a scarf. We probably looked ridiculous, like amateur spies, but it gave us courage. Step 1, I said, sliding a folder toward her. We gather evidence Derek can't explain away. Emails, texts, voicemails, anything showing he's the one ordering those transfers. She frowned. He's careful. He makes Ethan delete everything. People like him always leave traces. He'll slip. She thought for a moment, then said, he calls Ethan from his personal phone sometimes. If I can get into Ethan's call log, I might copy the numbers. That's something, I said. Start there. I'll work on the money trail. That day became the beginning of what I half-jokingly started calling Operation Mama Bear. I spent hours cross-referencing account numbers, searching for shell companies connected to Derek Lang's name. When I found 3 that traced back to an identical P.O. box, my pulse jumped. The next weekend, Lily and I met again. She looked exhausted but hopeful. She said, I got them. She slid me a paper. 6 different calls from Derek's personal phone over the last month. Perfect. We'll use that. Now we needed someone who could trace what those calls were about. My cousin Mark, again, came through. He said, if you give me a few days, I can see whether those numbers tie to any flagged accounts. But you didn't hear that from me. While he worked, I decided to test the waters. I called Ethan, keeping my voice calm. Hey, honey, how are you? There was a long pause. Fine, Mom. Busy. I heard you were working late. Don't forget to eat. He hesitated. Yeah, thanks. I almost said I knew everything. Instead, I whispered, you know I'm always here, right? No matter what. He murmured something that sounded like, I know, before hanging up. When I set the phone down, my throat burned. That tiny crack in his wall gave me strength to keep going. 3 nights later, Mark called back. Rebecca, you're not going to believe this. Those call numbers link to offshore accounts under the name DL Consulting. It's Derek's initials. He's been routing company funds there. My stomach twisted. Can you print that proof? Already done, but be careful. If this surfaces too early, Ethan's name's on some of those transfers. You need to separate him from the evidence. That became my new obsession. I forged a timeline showing how Derek had accessed Ethan's credentials remotely, possible because of his management clearance. I even found an old email from Derek instructing staff to share passwords for efficiency. Piece by piece, the story was building. Lily called again, whispering so quietly I could barely hear her. He's planning a meeting Monday, says it's for a final project. Ethan's terrified. What if he's forcing him to do one last transfer before disappearing? My pulse raced. Then Monday is the day we stop him. We met that night at my house and built the final phase. Lily would record any conversation Derek had with Ethan about money. I would compile the documents and send them anonymously to a financial crimes reporter I trusted. Mark would stand by to leak the data to auditors once the story broke. It felt reckless, dangerous, impossible, and exactly right. I looked at Lily across the table. Once this starts, we can't pull back. Derek will know someone's coming for him. She nodded. He already suspects. Let's finish it. When she left, I sat alone, staring at the watch box I'd brought to Ethan's wedding months ago. That gift had once been meant to celebrate his future. Now it sat unopened, waiting for the day he'd finally be free again. Monday creeped in like a storm you can feel before you see it. The sky was heavy with that dull metallic light that means rain is coming, and I swear even the air in my house felt charged. Lily texted at dawn. "He's already gone in. Derek moved the meeting up to 8. I paced for hours, checking my phone every few minutes. I wasn't in the room with them, but my mind kept drawing pictures. Derek sitting at the head of the conference table, smooth voice hiding sharp edges, Ethan, shoulders tense, trying to keep his breathing steady, other employees shuffling papers, pretending not to notice. At 10:30, a message buzzed through. Lily had slipped a small voice recorder into Ethan's work bag the night before. "It's recording. He doesn't know yet," she wrote. I didn't like keeping secrets from my son, but the only way to save him was to catch Derek in his own words. I waited until noon before I finally heard from her again. "It's done. Derek left early. Ethan's shaking." She came straight to my place after work, pale and silent. When she handed me the recorder, I half expected it to be empty, but the second I pressed play, Derek's voice filled the room. "Make the transfer today, Carter. Same account as last time. If anyone asks, it's for equipment procurement. You'll log it under departmental overhead. Got it?" Ethan's voice followed, tight and uncertain. "I can't keep doing this, Derek. It's not right." "You'll do it," Derek snapped, "or that little error you made last year goes public. I don't think the board would be thrilled to know you adjusted numbers on your first quarter report, would they?" There it was, the leverage. I stopped the recording and looked at Lily. That's enough. We spent the rest of the night pulling together every piece of proof, call logs, transaction records, that audio. I drafted a clean, factual email to the reporter at the Chronicle. Anonymous tip regarding financial misconduct at Apex Engineering. Attached are files detailing the scheme led by Derek Lang. Primary witness under duress, name withheld for protection. Before I hit send, I hesitated. Once this goes out, it can't be undone. Lily met my eyes. "Do it."
I clicked. The files went flying through cyberspace, the point of no return. For the next 2 days, time dragged. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. Then Thursday morning, the story broke. Headline: Senior manager accused of embezzlement scheme. Whistleblower evidence emerges. My knees nearly gave out. There in black and white were screenshots of Derek's transfers, quotes from his emails, even an audio transcript of the meeting. His name was everywhere. Ethan's wasn't mentioned once. By noon, Lily texted, "He's been escorted out. Police at the office. Ethan's free." I sat on my couch, hands over my mouth, tears sliding down my cheeks before I even realized I was crying. But freedom doesn't erase fear overnight. That evening, Ethan showed up at my door, eyes red-rimmed, shoulders slumped. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he whispered, "You did this, didn't you?" I opened my mouth to deny it, but the truth caught in my throat. "I couldn't watch him destroy you, Ethan." He stared at me, anger and relief fighting in his expression. "Do you have any idea what could have happened if this went wrong?" "Yes," I said softly, "but it didn't." He sank onto the couch, covering his face with his hands. For a moment he laughed, a shaky, broken laugh. "God, Mom, you're unbelievable." I smiled through tears. "That's what moms are for." He looked up, eyes wet. "I thought keeping you out would protect you. Derek said if I even talked to you, he'd come after you too." "I know," I whispered, but he underestimated us. For the first time in months, he hugged me.
a long, quiet, forgiving hug that said everything words couldn't. Outside, the rain finally started. It hit the roof in steady rhythm, washing the last bit of fear from the air. Derek Lang was finished. The company was already announcing an internal audit, and rumor had it law enforcement had traced the offshore accounts directly to his name. I should have felt pure triumph, but what I felt was something quieter: peace. The next week felt surreal. The news kept updating. Derek had been arrested, auditors were freezing his accounts, and the board was praising the anonymous whistleblower who exposed months of embezzlement. I kept my distance from the media, but every article, every headline made my chest tighten and then slowly release. Freedom had a taste I'd almost forgotten existed. Ethan didn't speak much at first. He came over every evening, sat with me, and sometimes we just watched the news together, letting the silence fill the gaps that Derek's manipulations had carved into our lives. But slowly he began to talk about the fear, the guilt, the weight of doing nothing while Derek's lies piled higher. "I can't believe I let him do that to me, to all of us," he admitted one night, voice trembling. "I thought I was protecting the company. I was just scared." I reached across the table and took his hand. "You were a kid in a man's game. You survived. That's what matters." He shook his head. "I survived because of you. You didn't just save me. You saved me from myself." I swallowed the lump in my throat. We saved each other. The company began a slow rebuilding process. Ethan was cleared of all wrongdoing, his record spotless now that the auditors had traced every fraudulent transfer back to Derek. Colleagues approached him cautiously at first, their expressions wary, some tinged with guilt for doubting him. But gradually, respect returned. The weight of Derek's manipulations lifted like fog burning off a cold morning. One afternoon, I found myself walking past the office building. I paused outside watching the employees streaming in and out. It should have been just another building, another workplace, but it wasn't. This was the site of betrayal, of fear, of secrets kept too long. And now it was a place of survival, of justice served. I took a deep breath and let the wind wash over me. I thought about Derek. Reports said he was facing multiple charges, possibly years in bars, and he couldn't touch Ethan or me. For once, the world felt balanced. Not perfectly, but fair enough. That evening, Ethan came over with a small cardboard box. Inside was the watch that I had brought to his wedding months ago, still pristine. "You never gave this to me," he said softly. "I want it now. Not for the wedding you missed, but for what came after." I took the watch, feeling the weight of it in my hand. "It's been waiting," I said, "just like you." We sat together, silently holding it between us. I realized revenge had never been about anger alone. It had been about reclaiming what was stolen: safety, dignity, peace. And in that sense, it had worked. Weeks later, I caught myself smiling at small things again. Ethan laughing over a coffee, Lily texting me with a casual, "all quiet on the Lang front," even the rain tapping against the window. Life wasn't perfect, it never is, but for the first time in a long time, it was ours. I reflected often on the lengths I'd gone to, the risks I had taken. I asked myself, would I do it again? Without hesitation, yes. Not for vengeance alone, but because doing nothing would have been a different kind of loss, one I couldn't bear. And as I tucked Ethan in one night, watching him finally sleep without fear, I whispered softly, "Mom's always here, and sometimes moms fight back." He smiled in his sleep, and I knew it wasn't just a relief for him, it was for me too. The storm had passed, leaving something stronger in its wake. Justice, peace, and a bond unshakable, forged in fire, betrayal, and the quiet but unstoppable force of a mother who refused to stand by.
sometimes I think about Derek, about how one man's arrogance led to his downfall. And I realize that in every heartbreak, every betrayal, there's a turning point. You can let it break you, or you can rise, step by step, until the scales finally tilt. And that's exactly what we did. I still remember the first moment I realized I couldn't save my son by standing on the sidelines. I walked into that house on what was supposed to be a normal Saturday and found him married to a stranger. A woman's presence felt like a knife twisting into the heart of everything I thought I knew. That shock, the disbelief, the fear, the raw, almost physical ache has never left me. But it also lit something in me, something fierce, something I didn't know I had. The unwillingness to let injustice go unpunished, the determination to claw back what was ours. And I've learned a lot since then. I learned that betrayal often comes wrapped in smiles, in whispered reassurances, and the quiet manipulation of someone who seems untouchable. I learned that fear can chain you, that shame can make you question yourself, and that even love can feel powerless when darkness is allowed to flourish. But I also learned this: courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage whispers to you in the middle of the night when you're alone with your thoughts, and it tells you to plan, to wait, to act with precision and patience. And what we did, Lily, Mark, and I, it wasn't reckless. It was meticulous. It was moral in a way that felt almost primal, righting a wrong, protecting a life, restoring balance. And the thing about justice, I've realized, is that it doesn't always arrive with a bang. Sometimes it trickles in quietly, piece by piece, until one day the world has shifted and the people who thought they were untouchable are left staring at the ruins of their own making. Ethan and I still talk about it sometimes, often in whispers because it feels too heavy to say out loud, too close to the memory. He tells me that he wishes he'd seen it sooner, that he wishes he'd known that someone was always watching, always fighting for him. And I tell him gently that sometimes the fight isn't about being seen, it's about being ready. Ready to act when the moment comes, ready to reclaim what's been taken, ready to survive and protect. And now when I look back, I don't just see betrayal and heartbreak. I see growth. I see a bond forged in fire. I see a son who survived the darkest chapters of his life and a mother who refused to let the world crush him. I see the ripple effect of courage, how one act of bravery can create a chain reaction that touches not just the guilty, but the innocent as well. I often ask myself, what would have happened if I'd done nothing? Would Derek have continued to manipulate, to control, to destroy? Would Ethan have been trapped in fear, endlessly paying for sins he never committed? The thought is unbearable. And I think that's why revenge, carefully measured, morally justified revenge, wasn't just satisfying, it was necessary. It was a reclaiming of life, of love, of dignity.
Sometimes, in the quiet moments, I imagine him, Derek Lang, sitting behind bars, realizing for the first time that arrogance and cruelty have consequences. And I allow myself a small, private satisfaction, because it's not just about anger or vengeance, it's about justice finally being served. But the real victory isn't in watching someone else fall. It's in watching someone you love rise. Ethan laughing again. Ethan breathing without fear. Ethan living a life that's his own, untouched by the shadow that once hovered over him. That is the prize. That is what matters. And for me, the lesson is clear. Love doesn't just protect, it empowers. It gives you strength you didn't know you had. It teaches you patience, strategy, and yes, sometimes the quiet art of revenge. But more than anything, It teaches you that even in the darkest hours, there's hope. There's a way forward. There's a path to reclaiming your life from those who would try to steal it. So I ask you, if you were in my shoes, if someone you loved was trapped, manipulated, and broken by another's greed, what would you do? Could you wait? Could you plan? Could you act with a careful, steady hand to make things right? Be honest. Because sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought with fists or fury. They're fought with patience, cunning, and the unwavering belief that justice is worth every risk. And when the storm passes, when the world finally tilts back into balance, what remains is more than triumph. It's relief. It's love restored. It's the quiet knowledge that you did everything you could, that you protected the ones you love, and that in the end, you were enough. Because in that moment, as I watched Ethan rebuild his life, free of fear, I understood the truth. Revenge isn't about cruelty. It's about reclaiming life, restoring hope, and proving that even the darkest betrayal can be met with light. And in that light, we rise together, stronger, unbroken.